and welcome to this David Icke dot connector videocast. Well, I spent last night watching the live coverage of the hearing of the US Senate Judiciary Committee, in which the nominee for the Supreme Court, Judge Brett Kavanaugh, defended himself against allegations of sexual abuse that are claimed to have happened 36 years ago. And his accuser, Christine Ford, gave her evidence earlier in the day. And what I saw and what I've observed in the run-up to that hearing is absolutely terrifying and testament to how far alleged freedom, justice, and fairness has been allowed to disintegrate. Justice must be blind. It must not see gender, it must not see race or religion or culture or income bracket. It must only see evidence and facts. But that presumption of innocent until proven guilty is now being trashed by this fascistic, progressive, as it calls itself, illiberal, regressive mentality that has taken over the Democratic Party and has hijacked the traditional left increasingly across the world. And of course, on the other side, as you'd expect, the Republicans have been useless in standing up for this basic right of being considered innocent until the evidence has been presented to show that you're not. What we have seen, where we are now, is a state of disgusting behavior whereby a clearly vulnerable woman in Christine Ford, who was terrified in front of the Judiciary Committee, being callously, coldly, appallingly used and exploited for political ends, because that's what that was all about. We have a situation now where people are not innocent until proven guilty. They are guilty if it suits a political agenda for people to believe they are guilty. It's not a case of, is someone innocent or not? It's a case of, they're guilty because it suits me. And once this basic foundation, in the same period that freedom of speech, another basic foundation of a free society, is being deleted by the day, we see this other basic foundation of people being judged by evidence and facts, not political expediency of the moment. ever since Brett Kavanaugh, who I would probably have many disagreements with in terms of his beliefs, but from the moment he was proposed to be appointed to the Supreme Court, the highest court in America that in the end decides what becomes law and what doesn't, since he was appointed, there has been this frenzy by the callous, fascistic, illiberal, so-called progressive left to stop him being appointed. That's what this is all about. This is not about Christine Ford. They don't give a damn about her. Proof of which I'll come to in a minute. They don't care about what has happened or not happened to a woman. They care only about exploiting that for their own political ends. That's where we are. That's the depth to which politics has descended into the cesspit. And so Kavanaugh went through the hearings leading up to a vote on whether he should be appointed to the Supreme Court. But the Democrats wanted that position. They wanted to delay and delay and delay so they could come to power and put their person into the Supreme Court. And so Christine Ford becomes the pawn in that game. And so Kavanaugh went through the hearings, and it was at the point where it was pretty obvious that when they took the vote, he was going to be appointed. And then, out of nowhere, come these allegations from Christine Ford. But where did they come from? These allegations that 36 years ago, she was at high school and Kavanaugh was 17. He sexually molested her. What's been put forward to support that? And I'm not making comment on what she says and what she claims. That's entirely her right to speak about what she says was her experience. But there's no corroborating evidence. There's no location. There was no time and no detail surrounding it. People she claimed were there, including a close friend, said they don't remember anything about it. And yet, on the back of that, all basic justice has gone AWOL. And Kavanaugh and his family have been through what can only be imagined in terms of the agony of the last best part of 2 weeks, while the whole hearing to consider this evidence before Kavanaugh was appointed was delayed. One of the reasons it was apparently delayed, or was tried to be delayed, is that Christine Ford couldn't come to Washington because she was terrified of flying. But then it comes out that she flies lots of places. And whatever people think of her story, And that's for, other people to judge as they see it. There's no corroborating evidence. And clearly, there's a political job going on around her in which she is the pawn. And yet, even with all that, Kavanaugh is guilty because it suits the Democrats that he is perceived as guilty, so he is not appointed to the Supreme Court. And Ford told Senator Dianne Feinstein, brackets disgusting, about the allegations in confidence, and was assured and asked for assurances that they would not be made public. But at the point where Kavanaugh had been through the hearings and his appointment was imminent, the allegations and the name of Christine Ford was leaked to the media. Well, anyone think it didn't come through Feinstein's office somehow? And this frenzy began. This animalistic frenzy tearing at the carcass of the target. And who then advised Christine Ford to get lawyers and advised her on who the lawyers should be? Dianne Feinstein, who proposed a lawyer called Deborah Katz, a Democratic activist, given money, vehemently anti-Trump, and someone who's clearly been on a road trip to Damascus, because she was the same Deborah Katz who was playing down allegations of sexual assault, true, against Bill Clinton. True in the sense that the evidence is there and is widely known. And so, against her will, but because it suited political expediency, Christine Ford is wheeled out terrified in front of a Senate committee on live, not just national but global television. They couldn't care less about her. They only care less about what they're exploiting her for. And so we saw this witch trial played out in the media. And then yesterday, where Democrats on that committee were not questioning Ford to see if her evidence stood up. They were just making statements about how they believed her and how it was terrible what had happened to her. No questions about evidence. Doesn't matter, you see. The Feinsteins and the Bookers and the Harrises and the Blumenthals and the Mazie Hironos, senator for Hawaii, who's been going around the media for days basically saying how guilty Kavanaugh is before he's even had the chance to put the evidence of his side of the story, which he actually did very compellingly when given the chance. And you know, this is how low we are. When Christine Ford began her evidence before the committee, this Hawaii senator put out an email to supporters asking for political financial donations on the basis of I've been working so hard on this that I've not been able to fundraise, so please put some money in an envelope. That's the level of exploitation we're talking about. This whole political correct mafia, this Me Too mafia, is not about protecting women. It's about exploiting them for political ends. Where are you, Me Too, when it comes to the disgusting, unspeakable treatment of women in Saudi Arabia? Where are you? Oh, silent. The hypocrisy is stunning. And we've reached the point where some television presenter on a program called The View, every time I catch it I want to throw up, called Joy Behar, actually talked about old white men protecting someone who was probably guilty. Evidence? Don't matter. Yeah. Old white men, that's come up a lot. White men. And in so many ways, you see, because it's all a psychological game. Brett Kavanaugh, who I say I would probably have lots and lots of disagreements with, has been used as the symbol of the undermining of men, and particularly white men who seem to be in the gun sights at the moment, probably ongoing. It's a psychological game, and it's being played on people all the time. This is just an extreme example. But what does it all mean from the bigger picture point of view? Well, look at the political landscape and how it's being plainly manipulated. You bring in someone like Trump, which pulls the Republican Party further to the right. And when you pull something in one direction, what you can get is a consequent extreme in the other direction. And so what we now have increasingly is this blatant polarity between the Trump White House and the so-called opposition, called the progressives and the Democrats. And so everything suddenly becomes black and white. And it means that at an election, not just in the United States, because it's happened everywhere, you have a choice between a president in Trump and the Republican Party around him that is completely owned by Israel, and the far-right neocons like National Security Advisor John Bolton. And that ain't much of a choice, frankly. But the alternative in this one-party state hidden by the two-party illusion is a Democratic Party that's so extreme in terms of political correctness, dictating what people can say and think and what views they can and cannot have, dictating whether someone's innocent or guilty by whether it suits them. And this whole fascistic, Stalinistic, whatever you want to call it, mentality that says only what we believe and what we want is valid and the rest of you can shut up. They are the political choices now. When's the last time you heard, for instance, these progressive, caring people talking about the homeless catastrophe in the United States? No. It's whether this man is guilty, whether this man is this, whether this person is saying this and should be stopped. The Democratic Party today is not the party of Kennedy. It is increasingly in its techniques the party of Stalin. And look in Britain, look at elsewhere, but look in Britain. You have a choice between this Conservative Party that is only interested in what benefits the rich and powerful. And then you've got a Labour Party, which if it got into power, would also introduce a frenzy of political correctness and a frenzy of support, ironically, for the very system, the very establishment it claims to oppose. They would, apparently, introduce vast changes in pursuit of fighting climate change, with, for instance, wind turbines all over the place, destroying beautiful landscapes. And what is climate change caused by human activity? It is a hoax to justify the transformation of human society in line with an agenda that which controls the establishment has been pursuing, not just for decades, but for much longer than that. So where's the choice politically? There is none, basically, if we're honest. And if this world is going to change, we've got to realize it's not going to be done through politicians. They are the problem. The political system as it's structured on purpose is the problem, not the answer to it. No matter what persuasion it claims to be and the colour of its bloody rosette. If we're going to change things, we have to do it by non-cooperation with that system, with non-cooperation with our own enslavement. Because there's this that I was talking about in an interview this week. We should understand that what the system wants people to believe is what the system emphasizes through the microphones. And so the political correctness and the progressive, regressive, fascistic lunacy is allowed access to the microphones. And so you can get the impression from that this basically represents public opinion. But it doesn't. You talk to people, quote, in the street, who don't have access to microphones, the vast overwhelming majority of them. Ask them what they think of what's going on and what's being pushed by these people. Ask them what they think of political correctness, where they're not allowed to have an opinion that's not acceptable to these people. And you find a very different view of what is going on. Talk to women away from the microphones about the way that men are being targeted for a political agenda where all men are the same. No more looking at someone as an individual behaviour. No, you're in that group, you're bad. You're in that group, you're good. And that is exactly how tyranny works. Deciding who is the villain and who's the good people and playing them off against the other. And because they're bad people, yeah, all of them, anything goes there. They don't deserve justice, they're horrible. They don't deserve an opinion that's different to ours because they're horrible. This is the psychological game that's going on. And we, the people that don't represent the mentality of the microphones, need to start calling it out, need to stop cooperating with it, need to stop being intimidated into silence by the mob. What has happened over this Kavanaugh case? Including, by the way, a lawyer that gives sleaze a bad name, bringing out other allegations right at the last minute that are so ridiculous and, again, uncorroborated. Are we going to let people like that sleazeball dictate and run our society? Or are we at bloody last going to take it back?